Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person, and today I want to talk to you about the Gamer V Portable. Before I give you the nice big reveal, this is the booklet. Just so you know, I'm not making it up, it came with a booklet. That's a lot of nice glares. So, is the information I'm getting here, just a quick preface, I got this at GameStop a few years ago for like $25. It was for a gift exchange thing, a gift exchange game thing with family around Christmas time, and I ended up winning my own thing because nobody stole it back from me, so I ended up with it. And after playing through it, it's maybe good that I did, but I don't want to spoil too much of this for you. This is you see a lot of things on here. This is the Gamer V Portable. You also see My Arcade up here. I don't know if that's like just a series or if that's a company or anything. I think it might just be a series. I don't know. But you'll see also the little website down here is Dream Gear, because the company I'm putting this out is called Dream Gear. And I did some research on this to try and figure out a little bit more about this thing. 'Cause I didn't know much about it. I had never really heard about it or seen it before, and I couldn't find a whole lot in my research for the stuff here because basically this thing claims to have 220 built-in games, 220 games in one, and I wanted to see, because what I was seeing from screenshots and other things, it seemed like these were games I'd never really seen before or heard of. They weren't like a bunch of just unlicensed NES games or something thrown onto a system or something like that. Though they do kind of have that 8-bit look. What they actually are, though, are a bunch of games that were made by, mostly made by a company called Nice Code, which made games over in China for systems like, like Famicom clones, or multi-carts, or multi-game systems, and plug-and-play systems. So this is basically the kind of thing you'd see this on anyways. After doing a little research, I also found that this was actually produced in, I think it was actually, I have to look again now, I believe it was actually manufactured in China, but apparently it's designed in the US. So, weird. Interesting, weird. I've seen a few different things. I've seen, a few variants. I saw a variant of this that looks different, of this system, and a lot of things online. But the one I have looks the way it does, and there's a few different models, I guess, and I guess I don't know. I'm only probably looking at one of these. We're looking at this today. And there are 220 games, but since this review, I want it to be under, 1,000 hours long, I'm not going to review every single little game on the video review. You're welcome. I'm going to be focusing more on the system itself. And if you want to see a review of those games, I did actually do a mini review of every single game on the system. So I'm going to link that in the description, or I don't know if it's going to be a link or multiple links or whatever. We're kind of flying by the seat of my ass here, because I wanted to get this out on February 20th, 2020, because I kind of realized, oh shit, yeah, that would be great. 220 games, 2020. That's cool, let's do that. And here we are. And I had to scramble to get it done because 220 games is a lot to do mini reviews on. But we'll see if that all goes up. And if it all works, you should be seeing links in the description or a link or whatever going to a bunch of those where you can see them done all in numerical order and giving you the genre, a couple screenshots for all of them, and a mini review of them. Plus, it's a documentation of like me going crazy playing through all of them, so that could be fun. But if you just want to hear more about the system and the games in general, stick around, because that's what we're going to do. I'll put the book away now. Alright, so let's take a look at the Gamer V Portable here. So, this is it. I can't really get a shot. That's great with this because it's very reflective screen. So you're just gonna see the camera and me and everything. Hey, and that's just gonna be how we're gonna have to do it. But the physical design of this here, you can see it looks kind of, I guess to me, almost like a Game Boy Micro. Almost, it kind of reminds me of that kind of size and shape and whatnot. A little My Arcade symbol down here. So the front here looks pretty nice. It's very reflective, and you can see I've been playing it, so it's kind of smudged up. It's a very like flat, continuous thing here going on. Although you can tell by the way the light kind of wiggles there. This isn't totally flat; it's a little warped around parts of it. But you got your A, B, you got your D-pad, start and reset. The D-pad, let's just start there. So the D-pad is okay. It's kind of a rubbery kind of a D-pad. The fact that it's like these are kind of rounded though, and there's like this like little middle bit missing, it doesn't feel great to use. Most games don't really require, or I guess don't even allow you to move diagonally, so there's not a whole lot of need for it, but when you want to, it's kind of hard to push both directions. It doesn't feel good because these are sort of smaller than they appear because of the way they're kind of, rounded off like this. So for hitting singular directions, it's fine, although switching back and forth the directions can be kind of tough sometimes too. It's not slippery, so that's good, but it can get kind of sticky, especially in the heat of the moment. Got the speaker down here that's got crap in it because I've been playing it forever. But it's mono sound just comes out of this one little speaker here, but it's a pretty decent amount of sound as we'll hear. The buttons are pretty good. It's just A and B. They're very clicky. They have this like they're convex. So like I don't know. They're just these buttons are actually surprisingly good. But you'll notice that it's kind of a weird placement of them. Because it's like, well, look at this, the My Arcade symbols down here, it shows the D-pad, and the buttons are like, staggered like this. And even the NES has buttons that are like straight across. So it's weird to have the buttons up like this. Which if you're holding it more like with your hands under it, then it's kind of fine if you're holding it more like this. Because then you can do both buttons pretty easily. If you're holding it more to the side, which you're maybe prone to do because it's more elongated, and it's not like the long thing like a Game Boy or something, right? It's like you're like this, and you'd have to kind of use your thumb in between them to do the rolling thing, or just do with one hand this way. It's kind of weird. So that's a little bit of a strange idea, and also this makes it weird because some games, most of them seem to have B as your primary button, mostly because I guess it's on the bottom, or I don't know. I don't know if that's true or if it's just the way these are usually done. They did that and it's awkward. Usually B is your primary button and A does other things, but it does kind of depend on the game. Then you got the start and reset buttons up here. Pretty clicky. They're out of the way enough so you're never going to accidentally hit it. Like they're pretty hard to accidentally hit, which is good. But you might get a little confused because there's not like a select button. So until you remember that this is a reset button, there's going to be a lot of times when you're playing a game and you go to hit start or something to do actions, you go to hit select, because maybe this is how I do this other function, and then it doesn't do that, it just resets your game. So that's kind of a thing you just have to get used to, but once you do, it's like not a big deal. And they function. Though it would be kind of nice if these sort of like when it's like dark, you don't have the lighting all that amazing, right? It's kind of like harder to see what your buttons are. So like, you just remember that A is on top, B is down there. But that's more of mostly the front. We'll get to the actual screen in a bit. And this power indicator just means like it's not a battery indicator. It is just a power indicator. So when the system is on, there'll be a light on in there, and when it's off, it'll be off. Although also when the system's on, the screen is on, so you don't really need that. But that's there. I guess unless your screen is having issues, but the power still works. Would be the only thing. Right on the top here, you got the on-off switch, which is fine. It's a little like wiggly. I don't like that. It's kind of loose. So there are some times if you don't do a clean flick on it, it won't really it won't turn on. Or like if you do a thing, just like if you touch it or like hit it while you're playing, which you're not likely to do because there's no actual buttons to hit up here. But if you did that just from holding it or whatever, sometimes tapping that or hitting it or something, or even like shaking the system a bit and jostling that can make the game glitch out and sometimes crash. Then we've got the plus and minus for volume. Though I found that the volume is usually pretty loud at the first one. You might need to bump it up one or two, maybe for if you're in a loud place or something, you need to hear it. But most of the time I found myself either leaving it on the first volume, or after a while, if it got annoying with the sounds, I would just hit the minus and make it go mute. I'd really rather have a slider because I really wish there was more of like a selection between, like it's either like it's off or it's pretty loud at the first volume. So I wish there were more like softer volume options between there, or like I said, like some kind of like dial or something to make it so it's just like easier to actually control your volume rather than just pick from a few select volumes of off, maybe a bit too loud, and then louder and louder and louder. There's no headphone jack or anything around here either, so you can't use headphones with it, and that's kind of a bummer. I think I've seen some of these where they have like stuff where you can plug it into a TV also, but this is kind of designed as a portable thing, so I understand why they wouldn't necessarily bother with that. And then we got the back here. See, we got Dream Gear put in there. That looks nice. Like this red and black theme looks pretty slick actually. But as you can see, the kind of like the texture here, this is a little more plasticky, and this looks a bit cheaper than the front. The front looks a lot fancier than once you get around to the back. The only thing questionable on the front is this D-pad looks a little weird when you look at it. But like, yeah, this back is good for having a bit of a grip, I guess. And I like the red, but it just seems a little bit cheaper. You can see it says Game Review Portable, dreamgear.com. And then it says this really obvious thing about batteries, which is a basic thing they probably shouldn't need to put there. I don't know if they're covering something else up. I didn't try to take the sticker off. It's just like, yes, if you have better batteries, they will work better. I don't know why you would need to include that on here, except to defend yourself from people being like, it kept dying on me. It's like, well, if you're a cheap ass who bought this, maybe you were a cheap ass with your batteries too. Oh yeah, and the battery life, I mostly use these batteries for most of it, and you probably get around 8 to 12 hours of gameplay on it before the battery becomes a big problem, so that's roughly the range I would say this kind of has for battery life. Just wanted to throw that in there too, since I forgot about it until just now and edit it in later because I hope I remembered to. But the main thing I wanted to really look at in the back here is that there's this part here where you have to with a screw, and that's where you put the batteries. So like, if you want to switch out your batteries, because no, the ones in here aren't that great, you gotta go in here with a friggin' screwdriver and take this out, right? And did I get you good enough? Are you out? Get out of there. You got this the tiniest screw. Oops. Like, it's so small, it'd be so easy to get it lost. You don't even necessarily need it. You can maybe just like tape this or something if you were worried on the back. But the thing is, like, it still seems to hold in pretty well without it. And then you can just pop this off. And that's where you put your batteries. And in the little thing here is where I found, it also says that it's got this information, and it says designed in the USA but made in China. So I don't know why this isn't like on this side of it. I think this would be important to know. But then you've got your batteries here, and it takes 3 AAA batteries, which is kind of annoying. Weirdly, they'll go the same way too. You don't usually see that. And these ones were kind of dying on me, so I'm going to put those over here. But like, this is kind of an issue for a couple of reasons, because it's like, okay, well, so you got that. And it's like, oh man, I want to put more batteries in. But usually batteries come in like, you know, even numbers of things, right? So, like this, got like a 4-pack. So, you go in here and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to get my batteries. Let's just do that. And, alright, and it's like, okay, so like I get this, and get my batteries in there, and cool, like now I'm able to play my games more. That's awesome, that's great. But now the next person that comes along probably is going to need 2 AA batteries for something, right? Or AAA batteries for something, right? And they go in here and it's like, oh shit, well now there's fucking like, there's only 1 battery in here, what the fuck is this? Or somebody has already used the pack, and it's like, oh cool, well let me get some batteries and get some more batteries for my Game Review Portable, and oh what the fuck? Well, that sucks. So you're kind of stuck with that. Just being kind of annoying. I kind of wish I would have either used 4 AAA batteries so it would have lasted longer, or maybe even 2, even though you'd have to change them more. But preferably, I wonder just why wouldn't they just use AA batteries? They could probably use 2 AA batteries and have better battery life. I guess this keeps it a bit smaller, a little bit, but not by a lot. And here's the other thing, is that then you go and you try to snap this sucker back in there. It doesn't always go in great, but usually you can kind of get it in there. You gotta take this tiny fucking screw, try to get that back in there. You do this to get your system going again. And now this isn't a big deal, but if this is a cheaper system you're getting, and it's likely going to be targeted at, you know, younger audiences, then it seems odd that you would have this and not just be like the Game Boy or something, where you could just have that little like flap you could open up, and it's easy for kids to go in and just snap it open, put batteries in, snap it shut again. Here you have to probably get an adult, like, not like a screwdriver is a super dangerous thing, but if you have a younger kid or something, you don't want to play with a screwdriver. And so every time they want to change the batteries, they have to do that. The screw is tiny, it's easy to lose. I don't know. So that's like kind of a weird thing to do. But then you get that, and that's pretty much the outside of this and the feel. And then you turn it on, and there you have this nice screen that shows you there are 220 games in one. And this is the volume. This is at 1. It's up. It's up. Up. That's about as loud as it goes. So it's not like it goes super loud. And you see the little power light indicator here, so this just means that it's on. You just select all these different games, and there are indeed, you can go page by page as well, so that's nice with the side buttons. And you hit up, or you go back here, hit here, and like you see, there are in fact 220 games on the system. So they didn't lie about there being 220 really, but let's talk about those games for a second. Hold on, one moment here. Let me get a. Oh, and another thing I want to mention before we get to the games, though, is the batteries. And I guess I have footage of this from before, so a little cut to that. But about the low batteries. This is just an example of the low batteries flickering effect. And sometimes if it gets low enough, it will just freeze on you if you're hitting a button, because I guess hitting buttons uses up the power. Turning the volume off actually makes it a little better, but turning it up makes it worse. And see there, it used too much battery and it froze. Okay, well, I'm going to assume you watched the low battery part. And now I guess we'll just talk about the games a bit, and we'll see if we can get some footage over with this thing. So there are about roughly 4 categories of games I want to go through here, and I'm going to go through them from the least amount of games to the most amount of games, starting with good games. There are, like, basically to qualify this, when I'm saying good, they're basically, you know, decent games that could maybe pass for, you know, forgotten B-level NES or arcade games. And a few come to mind, things like F-22, which I'm probably going to show here. It's a decent, like, shooter. And something like Curly Monkey 2, which is what they lead off the system with. There are a few games on here that I think are passable ones that maybe were included for a good reason. There's more effort put into them, there's more to them, there's a lot of times an actual, like, ending to these games and a goal, and it feels like you're actually kind of doing something in them. And this is sadly the smallest grouping of games that you'll find on here. Next up are the bad games. So that's already a bad sign that there's more of those, right? There aren't tons of those necessarily either, but when I'm saying bad games, I'm talking about games that were maybe a bad idea to do as games, or, you know, they're just unfinished or broken. Lots of them like this, and I'm probably going to be showing you this here. There are also, I believe, what is it? I'm going to look at the number real quick. I tallied them. There are, I shit you not, 13 games that are all pretty much feel like they're the same game, using the same engine and assets. They're these sporting events where you're playing as pandas. Every fucking one of them has you doing something where you get multiple attempts to try and reach a certain thing in the sporting event, reach that goal, and whether you do it or not, it just keeps looping over and over. No title screen, no victory or game over screen or defeat screen or anything. Sometimes there's a computer, sometimes there's not, even though it almost always lists that there is a computer. And I just feel like this was maybe all part of one big game that had all these different events. The screenshots, I believe, in the previews never even show a panda, but for some reason in all of them you're playing as a panda, and I don't get why. But games like this, games like slots, where it's just a fucking slot machine. There's a game where you're just calling the win or loss or tie on a game of rock, paper, scissors. There's a lot of these that are just bad or broken or unfinished, and I just don't know why they're even on here. The next biggest category is one that's, well, maybe a bit unfair, because I'm not really including it in the good or bad or even the category after it. So you're wondering, what kind of category is this? And it's not really about how good or bad it is, but I guess I'm calling the card game / board game category its own set, because really all they had to do for these was copy the rules of these existing games, make it so they, worked on the system, and made sure they didn't fuck that up. Things like solitaire and like mahjong, checkers, backgammon, go fish, war, whatever. There's so many of these card games and board games they just tossed on here. So they're kind of like simulation, but they're specifically a lot of card games and board games, and the only thing that's really all that nice about them is every once in a while you'll have the scores being kept, and you can play against computer opponents. So you don't have to deal with setting up and using a board or playing with other people, which makes sense on a system like this. But at the same time, did you really need another way to play checkers or solitaire or go fish? I mean, I don't know if that was all that necessary. And also, most of them lack any kind of instructions, so if you don't already know how to play a lot of these games, which for things like, I don't know, like Free Cell and like Hearts and even Solitaire, a lot of these games, you don't know how to play them already. I had to look up a few of these games. Backgammon, I had no idea. A lot of them I had to just, Google the instructions. They don't have any instructions built in. How hard would it have been to put in some text and have that be an option on a menu to see the rules of the game? Some of them you can figure out on your own. Some of them you kind of can't. And they expect you to know it, I suppose. So if you're looking to play those kinds of games, maybe just buy a tiny little, card book, or a book of card game rules, whatever. And just, have that, and then you'll be good to go. And lastly, the biggest group of games on here are the games that are just okay to meh. Playing these games that I guess are technically games, you can play them and do things in them, but would you want to? Are they fun? Would you remember them? Will you ever come back to them? Not really. A lot of this is just something you'll play and see that it's a thing on there, and it's there kind of to just fill space. And you can't really say it's not a game, but you also can't really say that it's worth it. And that is, very sadly, a majority of the titles on the Gamer V Portable. So basically what a lot of this comes down to is that while there are technically 220 games on here, that number is a little bit deceptive. There are a lot of games on here that are things that are, I guess, real-world games, so they didn't really make those games. At least with games that are more like rip-offs, well, they just rip something off, but they put their own spin on it or whatever. But for a lot of those, can you really count it? The only thing they did right was not, messing up the game and doing something wrong with games other people made. Some of these are broken and don't really work or crash, or they're just, so removed from actually being something fun and enjoyable that what's even the point, right? So, between that, and then also a lot of duplicates, there's games that are the same kind of mechanics with just different visuals. Some of them are slightly altered, some of them are just the same mechanics, the exact same stuff, with different visuals. And a lot of the names are, they have some typos in them, they have obtuse names, or just names that don't really make much sense. There's a lot of games on here, and they're all just numbered. And you'll also notice that when you're going through the list, at first there are a few games randomly out here. It starts with Curly Monkey 2, which makes you wonder why they started with the sequel. they sort of top load it with, oh, here are all these games that they think are better, more advanced, a little longer. They want to give you this false sense of, hey, I'm going to get some decent games with this. Um, and then pretty quickly you realize they start becoming alphabetical. And it almost seems like they had those and then just kept adding more chunks of games that were like in these files just ordered alphabetically because the alphabet starts over multiple times. And it just feels like there's less and less effort thrown into it doing a lot of that stuff. There are 220 things you can select to play, but there's far fewer games that are actually worth you even playing, and it's a lot to go through and digest to find the things that are even worth checking out in the first place. So that's the Gamer v Portable. And when I started off getting this and diving into it to review it, to look at every single game on here, which again, if you want those mini reviews, check the description. When I started out, I thought, well, this was $25, right? And I think you can find it cheaper now. But I paid $25 for this, so as long as I can find at least 25 games that are okay, right? Games that are, worth $1, they should be worth it. But I kind of came away from this realizing that that's not really the case. I mean, it's not like this is for no one. I think there's definitely some niche audiences this could appeal to. Like if you want to get this for someone who's never really played games before, especially like a kid, right? Very like young audiences. This is an okay thing to get because it doesn't cost a ton of money. It has a bunch of games built into it. There's a lot of different genres on here. There's shooter games, arcade, action, puzzle, sports, card games and board games and adventure games, platformers. There's a lot of different kinds of games on here, so you can kind of feel out and be like, maybe I like some of these games and maybe I don't like these kinds of games. And it's also just not a big deal if it breaks or gets lost, and it's portable and it's small, and I don't know. It just seems like a decent thing for that kind of audience. Even though there are a lot of ways to play games like that on computers and phones and other things, it's just a much cheaper device for getting games of that quality. And that's an option. Another one is if you're someone like me, someone who thought this was interesting, who really likes looking into games, reviewing them, was excited to see a bunch of games I'd never even seen or heard of before, and to see how they are. And it really helped me appreciate, what is good and bad in game design. There are a lot of games I've played, and people have said, "Oh, those games are bad. That game sucks. That's terrible." But looking at a lot of these, you can tell what happens when people really don't put in the effort. There's a lot of stuff in here that was slapped together, and again, was meant to just be looked at very briefly because it's part of a huge collection of games every time, so there was really no incentive to make something that was all that great. They only needed to make a few games that were passable enough to make it worth their while, and the rest were just filler titles to throw in there. But it's interesting to look at. It was something that was just time that I didn't waste. I didn't waste that time. But I can't recommend it for anyone else because it's not worth going through all of that shit just to figure out if you actually like any of these games or enough of these games. You'd have to make, write down which games you liked more. You'd have to be a madman who writes down lists like this to remember, oh, is my game good or is it bad? What do these marks mean on the side of the fucking paper? And yeah, you don't want to do that. And that's understandable. You might as well just get something that's decent, and then, worst case scenario, buyer's remorse from something like that. It's actually pretty similar to things I used to have when I was younger. There were these multi-game systems that were a lot of dot matrix games. Those little things with like, oh, here's Tetris, Breakout, Space Invaders type thing. Always a racing thing with the same blocky race car things. Yeah, Snake. You'd get lots of those that claim to have a bunch of games in one, and a lot of them are just variants of the same games. This is kind of like that, just with upgraded visuals. These games are a bit more engaging than some of those, although some of these are worse than some of those. But it feels like a more modern version of that. Even though it claims to be a 16-bit system, I think it's just 16-bit visuals. And even then, I think they're just not put to their full potential most of the time because it's just 16-bit color. So basically, it's colorful, but the biggest problem, I think, overall is that this screen is a bit too small, and also, I don't know if I showcased this very well, so I'll just do it now quick if the power button wants to work. If it's over there, that would help. But, like, the screen because it's so small, like it's kind of hard to see details on some things, and you might kind of notice that when you turn it, if the camera will work with it, like it kind of looks weird when you turn it. So you pretty much have to have a pretty straight viewing angle, otherwise the lighting is weird. And yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things to take in, and this is a budget system on purpose. It has a purpose, but in general, what I'm getting at is you probably don't want to bother unless you're part of one of these very niche audiences, very young audiences looking to see if they like games, or someone who wants to go through a crazy adventure because they just like weird handheld things like this, and they like to see what happens when game design is kind of not the priority in making games. And if you've played any other systems like this, let me know. I know I've seen other ones. There's like a Game Boy looking Gamer V portable thing, or I think it's a slightly different name. I've seen plug and play ones where they go into your TV. I've seen a number of them from the same company. So if you have any information on those, or like you're interested in those, like I don't know, tell me about those. I'm probably not going to play them because I played through 220 of these and almost lost my fucking mind. But if you want to, tell me about them, I'll listen to you. I think that's pretty good. A pretty good note to end on. Just, this is not going to be worth your time. And judging by what the view count is on this video, we'll see if it was even worth mine. Holy shit. Also, there are a few of the games I didn't beat, but kind of wanted to go back and try to beat. So if you want to see any of this on like a live stream, let me know in the comments. And if not, then boy, that's fine with me, because then I'm done with this goddamn thing.